That low-fat yogurt sitting in your fridge right now probably has more sugar than a chocolate bar. That whole grain bread your doctor told you to eat, it spikes your blood sugar faster than table sugar. And that fruit juice you give your children every morning thinking it is healthy, it is basically liquid sugar with some vitamins added. None of this is an accident, and none of it is your fault. You were deliberately misled by scientists, by governments, and by one of the most profitable industries in human history. Here's the fact that should make you angry. Since governments around the world told us to eat low-fat foods in the 1980s, obesity rates have tripled. Heart disease remains the #1 killer. Type 2 diabetes has exploded into a global epidemic. The advice was supposed to make us healthier. Instead, something went catastrophically wrong, and the reason why is hiding inside one of the most important health books ever written. That book is called Good Calories, Bad Calories, written by Gary Taubes, one of the most respected science journalists in the world. Taubes spent 5 years reviewing every major study on diet, fat, sugar, and heart disease ever conducted. He interviewed hundreds of scientists and doctors. His conclusion, backed by decades of research, is that almost everything we have been told about healthy eating for the past 50 years is wrong, not slightly off. Fundamentally, completely wrong. This video will show you exactly what he found, and why it changes everything about how you should eat. To understand why your healthy food is destroying you, you need to go back to 1955. A scientist named Ancel Keys published a study claiming that dietary fat, especially saturated fat from meat, butter, and eggs, directly causes heart disease. His theory was simple and easy to understand. Fat in food equals fat in your arteries. Governments loved it. The media ran with it. And within decades, the entire global food and health industry restructured itself around this single idea. But Gary Taubes discovered something deeply troubling when he dug into Keys's original research. Keys had studied 22 countries, collecting data on their fat consumption and heart disease rates. But he only published the results from 7 countries, the ones that supported his theory. When you include all 22 countries, the relationship between fat and heart disease nearly disappears entirely. The most influential nutrition study of the 20th century was built on cherry-picked data. One scientist, selectively presenting his findings, reshaped how 8 billion people eat, and the consequences have been devastating. When governments issued low-fat dietary guidelines, the food industry faced a problem. Fat makes food taste good. Remove the fat, and the food becomes bland and unappetizing. So food companies did what any profit-driven industry would do. They replaced fat with sugar. Enormous quantities of sugar. Low-fat yogurt, low-fat salad dressing, low-fat crackers, low-fat everything, all loaded with added sugar and refined carbohydrates to make them palatable. And they put health claims on the labels. Heart healthy, low-fat, good for you. People bought these products by the billions, genuinely believing they were making healthy choices. They were not. When you eat sugar or refined carbohydrates, your blood glucose rises rapidly. Your pancreas responds by releasing insulin to move that glucose out of your blood and into your cells. But insulin is also your primary fat storage hormone. When insulin is high, your body is in fat storage mode. Critically, your body cannot access the fat it has already stored. It is biochemically locked away. The low-fat diet removed fat, which causes minimal insulin response, and replaced it with refined carbohydrates, which cause a massive insulin spike. This is why people can follow a low-fat diet, eat less, exercise more, and still not lose weight. Their insulin is constantly elevated, making their body biologically incapable of accessing its fat stores. The damage goes beyond weight. Chronically elevated insulin drives inflammation, which damages arterial walls and contributes to heart disease. One of the most powerful sections of Good Calories, Bad Calories examines populations around the world that eat high-fat diets and what their health looks like. The results are extraordinary. The traditional Inuit people of the Arctic ate a diet consisting almost entirely of fat and protein, whale blubber, seal meat, fish, almost zero carbohydrates. By the logic of Ansel Keys and 50 years of dietary guidelines, these people should have had catastrophic rates of heart disease and obesity. Instead, researchers found almost none. Traditional Inuit communities had virtually no heart disease, no obesity, and no type 2 diabetes before Western processed foods were introduced. The Maasai people of Kenya and Tanzania lived almost entirely on meat, blood, and milk, extremely high in saturated fat. Again, almost no heart disease, no obesity. The French eat full-fat cheese, butter, cream, and foie gras, yet historically have had far lower rates of heart disease than Americans following low-fat guidelines. This became known as the French paradox, a puzzle that confused nutritionists for decades. Taubes argues it is not a paradox at all. It is evidence that fat was never the problem. Gary Taubes is not telling you to eat recklessly. What good calories, bad calories argues, backed by decades of research, is that the macronutrients we were told to fear are not the problem, and the ones we were told to embrace are. Here is what the science actually supports. Stop fearing fat. Eggs, butter, avocado, olive oil, nuts, full-fat dairy, meat, and fish. These foods do not cause obesity or heart disease. They keep you full, they stabilize your blood sugar and insulin levels, and they do not trigger fat storage. Eat them without guilt. Start fearing sugar and refined carbohydrates instead. White bread, pasta, rice, cereals, fruit juice, biscuits, cakes, and almost everything in a packet with a health claim on the label. These are the foods that chronically elevate insulin and drive fat storage, inflammation, and disease. Read food labels differently. Stop looking at the fat content, look at total sugars and total carbohydrates. A product with 12 grams of fat and 2 grams of sugar is almost always far better for you than a product with 1 gram of fat and 18 grams of sugar. And be deeply suspicious of any product that prominently advertises itself as low-fat, diet, or light. These are marketing terms that almost always mean the fat was replaced with sugar. The low-fat dietary guidelines were introduced in the late 1970s and early 1980s. In the decades that followed, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and metabolic disease exploded across every country that adopted them. Gary Taubes spent 5 years documenting exactly why in Good Calories, Bad Calories, a book that every person who eats food should read. Your grandparents ate butter, eggs, full-fat milk, and real meat. They were dramatically thinner and healthier than we are today. That is not nostalgia. That is evidence. The science was wrong. The guidelines were wrong. And you deserve to know the truth. Good Calories, Bad Calories by Gary Taubes. Read it. It will change the way you think about food forever.